Well, well, well. Welcome back to EDI Wednesday, one of the tools we use in the Institute for Equity University Center to communicate and to challenge and to examine and to scrutinize issues around equity, diversity, and inclusion and belonging within society and education. We're delighted to be joined today by Dr. Nicole Ponsford, the Chief Executive and founder of the Global Education Collective and a Fellow of the Institute for Equity University Center. Nicole, I wonder if you could just start in 2 minutes by just telling our audience a little bit about yourself and your work.
Absolutely, I'd love to, and thank you for inviting me. So I suppose I'm a teacher. I went into teaching because school was my safe place when I was younger. And when I became a teacher in 2000, I realised pretty quickly that actually schools aren't safe places for everyone. And the short version is I wanted to do something about it. So I worked in schools with high need. I worked in one of the first Labour Academy schools, schools for the future. And realised that my place was supporting and creating positive cultures. So I'd worked in a school where Millie Dowler had been. I worked in some of the least achieving schools in the country. And then following that, when I had my own child who had needs, I then worked for an educational charity called Achievement for All, which focused on social mobility. And it was at that point I realised that actually we could use technology and particular data for inclusion to help close gaps in schools and maybe measure what we don't see normally. So I started my doctorate in 2018. I've just finished that. And essentially the Global Equality Collective is the real world model of my doctorate. So I've got the GC Circle, which is the largest collection of EDI experts in education. We're over 400 strong, made up of academics, authors, grassroots groups. And then we've got our GC platform, which is our turnkey solution for inclusion in schools. And to date, we're in just under 400 schools in and across 30 countries. And as a result, realised that we surveyed quite a few. So this July, we put out our first report, 26,000 voices, and we've just launched our inclusion index, which we are going to use our data and our technology to termly do a health check on what's going on in education to help support wider change. So that's me, and that's my work, Paul.
Sounds like a fantastic advert for the GEC. You couldn't ask for better. So you mentioned schools are not safe spaces for everyone, and I wanted to explore that with you, because there are many head teachers who would say schools are safe, and there are many head teachers who would say, well, we are working to make sure that schools are places of belonging for all. So many might frown, might scoff at your comment that schools are not safe places for everyone. So how do you respond to something like that?
Well, it depends how you define safety. And so what part of being safe isn't just against physical threats. It can be the fear of not being yourself as well, and being authentic, being seen. And I believe schools are there to unlock potential. That's very much where I became a teacher. And I still feel that we're not doing that. How do I know this? Well, as well as surveying 26,000 people, young people, and a few as more wise older people as well, we can see that the data in particular tells us that. And I suppose the data that I've created through the work of my doctorate and the real world deployment of it is I've looked at a new way of data. So much of the data we get in schools is very static. It identifies what has happened, who has turned up, what grades people have got. It doesn't necessarily give us grades around it in terms of like the why. And I suppose the why equates to safety for me, so who doesn't feel that they see themselves in their books, who doesn't have a trusted adult, are there areas in school that people feel that they can't be themselves, do they feel that leadership pathways
sorry to interject, Dr. Nicole, but But how do you respond to people who would just say, this is just wokery, because how long is a string of rope?
Well, I think sometimes what we've tried, where it's been so multidimensional and complex and messy, that kind of gets chucked out of a window because it's too hard to comprehend. Actually, it's not hard to comprehend. Although maybe doing it in a manual way that we've done before, maybe bringing consultants in, it's been laborious, timely, expensive. But actually, where we start to use technology that can ethically, and this is important, that that the work that I've been doing has been co-created, co-designed. I've worked with, the student module. We work with 50 student councils, Goldsmiths University. So this isn't just a kind of, something we've kind of pulled out of thin air. This has been designed with the participants who feel underserved as well. And so their voices very much went into the build of what I've done, from a stance that they do feel that, they could belong more, which means they could achieve more, which means they could belong more and they could thrive. And I know as a school leader myself, I work tirelessly to help people feel safe. And I know the complexity of initiatives that we would run in our schools to do that, from things like not just having tutors that were from the curriculum team. In one of my schools, we had site team administration who were a second tutor. So the adults that the young people saw around the corridors knew them better. So when they walked into school, everyone knew their names, said hello to them, and they felt welcomed. And I'm not saying that, all schools are terrible. I mean, the problem we've got, particularly in English schools, that there is a lack of consistency. And I know that that's what the new administration are trying to look at in terms of, the upcoming white paper this autumn, what the select committee have put out, and the Ofsted changes as well. But we only have to look at our lack of attendance. We only have to look at our figures around CAMS. And we can see that in particular, we've got staggering numbers of young people who don't feel that they belong in school. We have got a recruitment and retention issue with our staff. So, there are issues that need to be addressed.
Um, well, you haven't answered the question of about potential people backlash on people saying this is just wokery, but 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 I take your comprehensive answer just the same. But you,
Mm,
in your response just now, you said your work is about
mm,
creating positive cultures, and I wonder then for the head teacher, the school governor who is out there listening, indeed for the skeptic of our work who is
mm.
out there listening, if you had to say to them, this is a typology of positive culture, or this is a blueprint or a roadmap to creating culture, what could that look like?
I think that's where bringing in social capital is really important, and I can talk to you to that. And I think that maybe addresses the previous question as well, because I think when we look at the education system at the moment, there are real binary pedagogies that are occurring at the same time. So we have got a push for belonging, a push for anti-racism, a push for more support for our SEND students. And then we've got the tying in of attendance and behaviour hubs, zero tolerance, silent corridors. So there is that landscape in the background, and we know we have leadership on very different sides of where that is. One of the things I think we can all agree on is that the relationships in our schools are pivotal to outcomes. And quite a lot of the time when I'm talking, I think we can see that we have equity on one side, closing those gaps, understanding those young people, them feeling they've got a sense of being seen, acknowledged, belong, or engagement, whatever language you want to put. And then that helps them thrive, achieve, create those outcomes. Now, one of the things that when I was doing my literature review, and looking at how we can measure inclusion in a way that is participant led, I came across social capital. And I think people may have heard of Bourdieu and may have heard of cultural capital. And as I started to explore this, for me, I felt that that was still very much encased in privilege and an idea of what high art, high culture is for some and not others. Social capital is very different. Social capital is the capital that we get from our relationships and our human connections with other people. And I feel that that's a really safe and understandable measurement to see how we connect with the people that are coming onto our site before 9 o'clock every day and leaving just after 3 o'clock every day as well. And so, if I may, social capital is built of three different levels. And I think this is why it's so important, particularly for the audience that you've just mentioned. So the first way you can build social capital is with people that are like you. And we can see this with our young people, that they will kind of gravitate towards people who have the same sort of ideas as them, who maybe are above the waterline of visibility, who feel they've got kind of shared connection. That's called bonding. Building social capital is a second part, and that's when you start to look outside of your group. And that's really important because we're seeing that when we do have homogenous groups that all think the same, that can also err into danger and groupthink. And we've seen that out on our streets over the last few weeks and last summer and beyond. The building social capital, is more about us understanding that people are different from us, and yet there are similarities underneath, and we all want to work together to better. The problem that we've got in schools is where they start to put initiatives or have like awareness days, for example, that kind of caters to maybe those two types. The real difference, the way that we can really build social capital for the people in our building, is linking. And that's when there is a leadership that oversees that the people with the most need get access to resources like funding, investment, or human resources like staff, for example. And that's a model I think is really supportive to understand how we are helping to unlock potential in our young people, how we are helping them to build connections for themselves in order to be more confident and maybe to access things that they couldn't do before. And I feel that's a model that, although it's not been used in education before, it has been signposted in several DFE reports over the years, but it's not really been taken on board. And that's something I'd really like to see addressed, really focusing on the relationships that we've got with each other in schools.
Brilliant. It's a good point to take a break and to hear from our sponsors. But fascinating things, really interesting model of social capital you have just articulated for us there, Dr. Nicole. Just a short break to hear from our sponsors.
My friends, welcome to the Institute for Equity University Center. I want to talk to you a little bit about our institutional support package. Many of you have heard me talk before about our training package, but not so much about our institutional support. In our institutional support package, we do a lot of audits, curriculum audits, policy audits, textual and material audits. So we audit books for publishers and for organizations that want to produce material. This is another area of our work that we want you to get involved with. If you're doing a research project and you want somebody to sit on your board as your project advisory board, or if you are just thinking about embedding EDI in your organization and you're unsure, make us your accountability partner. We will sit with you, we'll hold hands with you, we will walk with you and walk beside you through the process as partners in the great struggle and the great opportunity.
Welcome back, colleagues. Welcome back to our audience, wherever you are. And we are talking to Dr. Nicole Ponsford, Fellow of the Institute and Chief Executive and founder of the Global Education Collective, who spoke passionately about schools and why schools need to be safe spaces and what school leaders need to do to bring about positive culture in schools, and who has set out a three-part model around belonging, bridging, and linking, which she calls the social capital model for inclusion. Dr. Nicole, I wondered whether you could talk to us a little bit about this new Ofsted framework then, because, and for those of our viewers who don't know what Ofsted is the school inspectorate here in the UK. And, I wondered whether you could talk to us a little bit about that, because Ofsted has been variously accused, has been unsympathetic, and also not really coming to terms with EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion in their work. So I wonder if you could help us to understand what this new framework might mean for schools, but what this new
Mm.
framework might mean for EDI.
Yeah, I'd love to. And I'm not here to advocate for what they're doing, and I don't think it's perfect. I used to live in Reading. I had friends who worked in Caversham at the same school as Ruth, and so there I have got a personal, interest in what's been going on. But if we look at it through an inclusion lens, which is what I'm trying to do, one of the things I'm really pleased about is that inclusion has its own criterion, which is new. It's never had that before. So whereas safeguarding has, when the draft came out, there was a bit of a push from CEOs that inclusion should, is embedded in all we do. When we know that's not true, we know that we've not been getting it right in our schools. So I was really pleased to see that where the schools are doing well, they will really be able to celebrate that good work with that area. I think one of the other things that's new is not just looking at quantitative data, so the numbers, they want qualitative data for the storytelling. And that's where I think we're going to start to see a new way of looking at data, which I'm really excited about. Which, can I say, I used to hate data. I used to hate sitting in workshops with Excel, and I've actually since found out I've got dyscalculia, which is why I like to do data in a way that's accessible to everyone. But I think that's really clear that Ofsted are looking for the voices of the people as well. And so as a parent of three, my hope is that when people are looking at schools, they won't just be referring to WhatsApp groups, that actually they'll be able to have a say on what's going on. And in a more kind of formal setting, you'll be able to understand where the right school might be for your child as well. There are still a lot of issues with it. I think it's an awful lot for inspectors to do in 2 days. But I think the breakdown of it is a way it needed to go. So for me, I think the thing that I'm most pleased about is inclusion is going to stand in its own way. There's also, if you have a look across the different frameworks, looking into the early years and then going through to FE as well, the Equality Act is noted several times running through it as well, which again, our data in schools isn't actually linked to the Equality Act. So again, I was quite pleased to see that as a way of moving things forward for inclusion. Have you had a chance to have a look at it at all, Paul?
I have, and like you, I feel like it's not perfect, but a definite step in the right direction.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
to have
yeah. I mean, it never
inclusion
was going to
singled
be
out, I
perfect.
feel. No, of course, and we're all different people with different agendas and different mindsets and so on. So what I might see as a win, somebody else might see as a setback. But I do, like you, I do think that to have inclusion on its own is a really good step forward for this work. But because this interview is not about me, it's about you, and I have one final question before I wrap up. You talk a lot about data um,
Mm.
and how you use data. And I wonder what tips or what advice you would give to schools and to school leaders who haven't been using data as well as they could or as well as they should. Perhaps some like you who don't understand it or who have dyscalculia or just don't know how to use it or how to benefit from them. So how would you reassure schools and encourage schools and school leaders to be able to confront data in a way that is accessible to them and beneficial for the decisions they make?
I think maybe part of it is changing the word data itself and considering that you're trying to get intelligence, you're trying to understand stories about your people, you're doing research. Because I think we are almost programmed to think of data being two things, performative data, so our subject grades or attendance. And actually, in this day and age, we can get a lot of insights and a lot of analysis around things beyond that. So I think the first thing I would say is take out the word data itself and think about intelligence, and then start to think about the things that are important that you want to know more. Some people call it measuring, some people call it understanding, and if that is around well-being, how can you track that, understand your people, understand the stories. So yeah, I think first of all, get your head around what data means to you as an organisation, and then start to think about the things you would actually like to measure, and then put value there instead.
Brilliant. And before we wrap up, thanks, Dr. Nicole, for such an insightful contribution, and I hope this will be really beneficial to schools and school leaders up and down our country, but all over the world. Thanks again to our producer. But before we sign off, we just want to give you an opportunity for listeners to and viewers to know you a little bit different, or to know a little bit more about you. Not a serious academic and chief executive and founder that you are. So just some quick fire questions. So some really quick answers. Who's the most
Okay.
inspirational person in your life?
My children, all three of them.
Okay. And what's a good answer. And what's your favorite work snack?
My favourite work snack. Oh, well, today it is extra chocolatey Tim Tam that was on offer.
For me, it would be cashew nuts. What's your favorite productivity tool?
Canva, I would say.
All right. And what is the last book you read?
Oh my goodness. The last book that I read, I'm reading lots of different ones at the moment. I tend to read.
I thought you were going to
I can't
say.
even think what
Thought you
I'm
were going
reading
to say
at the
one of my
moment.
books.
Well, I have read your books, and I even put them. I quoted them in my thesis, Paul. But just looking up here, I can see Dawn O'Porter Honeybee is one that I've read recently.
All right. I give you one more shot to redeem yourself. What's your favorite four-letter word beginning with P?
Paul.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant. Well, thank you once again, Dr. Nicole. Good answer. It's been really good chatting to you, and I certainly hope viewers would benefit from this. I want to thank our producer once again, Sharon Irumekai, and our sponsors for supporting our work today.